Hi everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Boss Beginner Series. This is episode 6, which is going to cover hero tokens and hero farming. So, as you probably know at this point, each particular hero requires tokens in order to level up. So depending on where you're at in the game, what your situation calls for, there's all sorts of different locations of hero tokens. So for example, right now, if we go into the shop, because there's an event going on, if you're participating in the event, if you're new to the game, these will be good good purchases for you if you can muster up the gems for these. So basically, your tokens are meant to level up your heroes. So most of the time, these events will have some of the more rare ones, but it's a great source for individual hero tokens. Otherwise, what most people will do when you first start out the game, and maybe you don't recognize it to start with, but as you go through the campaign, the first instance where people will see the hero tokens is actually as they run through the dungeons. So let's just say you're only on the first or second chapter. Each individual dungeon will tell you which hero token it's going to drop. And every single dungeon in normal and challenge mode will issue a hero token of some sort. I know that does not mean that every single hero in the game has tokens out there for you to farm. It's not that perfect of a world. So there's obviously going to be much easier heroes to get, and there's going to be a ton of rare ones. So as far as the number of heroes that are ultra rare and don't have any tokens available, there's probably, I would say, a good quarter of the heroes out there cannot be found other than in the portals themselves or as rewards for other stuff. So there's definitely a lot of good heroes that you can get, and there's some that you can't get and maybe don't need to get. It's a matter of personal preference, really. Obviously, as you first start out, you're going to be limited. So, for example, as you go through the first couple of chapters, you're going to get heroes like Willow, and you're going to get Yasmin, Sume, maybe get some Shadowblade, some good heroes to start with, and some of these will really get you through the primary campaign. So as you start getting a few chapters in and start leveling up some of your people, then you're ultimately going to start shifting focus to farming. So most people, when they just start out, they just play through the dungeons because they're not overly familiar with the game. So you're just going to play through, and ultimately you'll get rewards here and there, and you'll get hero tokens and level some of your heroes up. And that's just the normal progression of the game. Once you get into your hero tab, though, this is where the farming is actually going to start. So let's pick one of those people that you'll have early on, like Willow. So let's say you're using Willow early on in the first couple of chapters, and you're saying, you know what, I want to get Willow maxed out more than what she is, or I want to level her up as quickly as I can. So once you go out here, you click on her little token page, and it'll tell you all of the dungeons where you can find her tokens. Now, at first glance to the untrained eye, and honestly, by the time you get this far, you'll probably already know the difference here anyways. But as you scroll through, it may seem like there's a ton of dungeons. You'd be like, oh, I can actually level this up pretty quickly. But if we look at this, you'll start to see these repeat right from the start. So notice Tangle of Claws. And unfortunately, at this point, you cannot double up on hero tokens. So you can't run the dungeon once in regular mode and then again in champion mode or challenge mode and get 2 tokens for the price of 1. If you run the dungeon, whatever its name is, that's it. You get the hero 1 time. So it's kind of not fair in that aspect. I don't see that ever really changing unless they get to the point where they really want people to get tokens a lot faster. The only reason I would ever see that happening is if we just get so many different heroes out there that they're spread too thin, and then they'll open that up so you can maybe get twice as many tokens. So for the lower level player, obviously do the regular campaign dungeons rather than the challenge mode. The challenge mode obviously has its benefits, but it's also a little bit harder. So when looking at the actual hero tokens, depending on your preference here, so for example, if I go back to my list here, and I pick somebody like Pygneus. Pygneus is one that I'm actually still farming. We'll notice that with Pygneus, some of his are actually only available in challenge mode. If you look at the the recommended level, it says that hero scaling is enabled. That's perfectly indicative that it's actually a challenge mode dungeon and not a regular one. So some of the heroes are only available in challenge mode. Some of them are available in both. Basically, as you get far enough along where you're basically most of the way through champion campaign, you'll be able to basically unlock as many as you see fit and start farming them. So when it comes to actually farming hero tokens, there's a couple things that I like to point out for newer players. Obviously, when you first start, you have limited capability as far as farming. So if you're only like level 15 or so and you only have about 30 stamina, obviously you can't just go on a farming binge. What I would suggest, if you have limited stamina, focus on somebody to start with as far as leveling up so you can get that hero maxed out or leveled up as fast as possible. So let's just say, for example, we'll go back to my example with Pygnius. And Pygnius isn't a good example for everybody because he is only available in the challenge mode. But let's just say I only have 30 stamina. So first and foremost, you're going to pick whoever your highest priority is. And I'm going to say that for me, it's Pygnius at this time. And so I'll grab Pygnius and I'll go into his hero thing and say, okay, I only have 30 stamina. I'm going to spend it on Raider Camp here, Quick Loot, and maybe I use my Quick Loot keys and I actually get the tokens that I want, and there's no more for him to get, and I still have some stamina left for the day. That's when you would focus on your secondary hero. But I almost always recommend picking a hero and trying to level them up as quickly as possible. Now, depending on your stage of the game, choosing which hero that's actually going to be is actually kind of a challenging feat because you do need to know what some of the end game heroes are, where your priorities should fall, and basically how hard it is to get tokens. So it's not out yet, but I do have a guide coming that's going to show the priority guide for every single one of the colors and every single one of the heroes. And it's going to basically show you when is the best place to try and start farming these people. So just to give you a quick little tidbit into that, if you're looking to level people up faster, who is the fastest person you can level up? And it's a little bit of trivia, but I've jotted every single one of them down. And the answer is, drum roll, Squinch. So Squinch is actually, statistically speaking, the single fastest player that you can max out. The reason being is out of all the heroes, every single one of them, like I said, I documented every single one, he actually has the most single unique dungeons that you can actually run, which is 9. And actually, I think that's 2 more than the next closest. I don't think anybody actually has 8 dungeons available. There are a couple of heroes that have 7 dungeons available for hero tokens, but what this means is, at your very worst, provided you have the stamina, you can earn 9 Squinch tokens per day. So obviously you might get some good dungeons in there where you get the better chests and earn a couple more, but that means that because you can earn the most of his tokens per day, he is technically speaking the fastest person that you can actually 6-star. And that's actually good for you to know because Squinch is actually pivotal in endgame content because he's a major player in the Goblin team. So that actually gives you a little bit of a tidbit of info to start with. If you have Squinch, start farming him daily because he is going to be helpful. If you're currently spending tokens and leveling up Jabber, I would probably advise against that. So you can always let us know what your hero roster looks like and who your main heroes are now, and we can tell you if you're spending your gems and your hero tokens in a good spot and leveling up the right people. You want to make sure that you're doing the best you can to basically set yourself up for endgame content so that by the time you get to level 50, 60, 70, you're not stuck with somebody who's a really good hero and have them only at 3 stars, for example. 3-star heroes, when you get to the end, unfortunately just don't cut it in some of the dungeons. So having your Goblin team all at 2 or 3 stars is not going to be helpful for you, and they're going to get killed a lot easier than what they should. So with that said, that's going to wrap up this episode of Hero Token Discussion. There's not a ton of information in here. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to leave them below. If you have any questions on which heroes actually have a high count for dungeons, like I said, I have every single one of them written down, but I have not released the hero priority guide yet. Feel free to just drop a comment. I'll let you know which ones have the best count so far. Otherwise, stick around for the next episode, which is going to be Stars and Ascensions. Thanks.